On April 30th, I would depart Buffalo, New York, en route to Frankfurt, Germany. But this meant a 3 a.m. wake-up call in Buffalo and a quick flight on JetBlue. I'd land in Boston and face another 9-hour layover before boarding my Condor flight to Frankfurt. Shortly after getting on board in Boston, I realized that my bags were not on the aircraft. So I notified flight attendants. They in turn notified the captain, who they in turn notified ground crew. And together they figured out not only my baggage was missing, but probably most of the other passengers aboard. This would cause us a 2-hour delay for departure out of Boston. At the most, I might have gotten a couple hours sleep on the way over to Germany. And after arriving in Frankfurt, of course, the first stop is immigration, getting through the German police and having my passport stamped. Then there was another couple of hours delay waiting for my bags at baggage. Apparently the Germans check over everything fairly closely before they let you touch it. And then there was another 2-hour delay waiting for my bicycle to come through oversized baggage. And once I had everything in my possession, I went in search of a nice quiet area where I could put together my bicycle. I found a construction site within the airport, and that's where I set up shop to rebuild the bike. What I didn't know at the time was that it was a German holiday, and that's why nobody was there. It worked out perfectly for me. Once packed up, I set off on the road, and of course I headed out the wrong direction. By the time I figured that out, I turned around and there were a couple of German police officers standing outside of the airport. So I asked them if I was going the right direction, and one of them pointed me in the right direction, said just a few hundred meters down the road I'd pick up the trail, which I did. For the first part of my ride, I would ride along the Main River, leads out of Frankfurt, and eventually that merges into the Rhine. And then I would follow the Rhine to the north for several more miles until I came to my first campsite. The most of my first week's ride was along the Rhine, which is a major wine area in Germany. And the history here goes back to the Roman days and grapes, and they are quite proud of their grapes. Religion circulates wine and grapes, and it is just a great, beautiful place to see. But you probably would want to bicycle along the Rhine because everything else is up and down, and it's quite steep. My goal this first week was to reach Manoa's house in Duisburg, Germany. Manoa, whom I first met in Alaska in 2022, was riding from Alaska to Argentina. He is originally from the Netherlands, but currently lives in Germany. Manoa was 20 at the time, and of course was much stronger and faster than Donna and I, and eventually, after a few weeks, he would take off with Inga, a German woman who we also met on the trail someplace in the Yukon. After Manoa left Donna and I in the dirt, he would ride off with Inga, and they rode to Calgary, Canada together, where Manoa would end up flying back to Europe for a wedding, and then he would return to Canada and pick up his ride. In Calgary, he began to ride the Great Divide Ride, and then upon reaching the United States, he stayed at my house for a few days. A day or two after arriving was his 21st birthday, so we celebrated with a cake and so forth, and then he was off down the road headed to Mexico. Unfortunately, he bailed out someplace near Colorado, and he flew back to Europe. He was hot on the idea of beginning his business as a builder and designer of custom bicycles. As for the ride, I would say right now the most impressive thing about riding in Germany thus far are the miles and miles of trails for bikes and separate bike lanes away from the traffic. Somebody has thought this out, and the country as a whole has a huge positive attitude towards bicycles